this is the first version of our new digital webinar series with Purlos. And we're used to doing one webinar every month, getting 20 to 30 people to turn up, and it being an hour long, which sometimes is a bit long for most people with busy schedules. So the most scalable approach we're going to take now for this new digital series is to do half-an-hour webinars every single week, and they'll be also a little bit more product focused rather than just looking at insight and trends within further education. We had quite a bit of feedback from potential clients and existing clients that they actually want to see the product, new features, so they can actually look if they want to buy it, basically, and if it's going to benefit them. And it kind of made sense. So that's what we're doing today for half an hour. So it'll be quite short, sharp, snappy. So today we've got Sally along with us, who's been on a webinar with us before. She's been great. Has worked at RNN Group for how long now, Sally?
Oh, just over 18 months, coming up 2 years.
Yeah, and in further education for quite a bit longer, I reckon.
11.
You said that like it was a tied 11. Yeah, long.
Yeah, no, 11 years. I was trying to think when it back end of 2010.
Yeah, perfect. And your role is marketing director?
Marketing director with learner recruitment responsibility and employer engagement.
Yeah, and just to give everybody a little bit of background in terms of Purlos and RNN Group. So Purlos is a couple of years old. Purlos is a company that has originally been founded to help colleges increase their revenue and their growth while reducing dropout during the admissions process. And we actually created a half human, half tech-based digital assistant that connects to applicants during the admissions process. It's really important just to highlight that it's a half human and a half tech digital assistant, because that means that we can answer questions with a really high quality, but the digital side of the chatbot means it can be much more scalable than an admissions team person. And then we also use AI on our dashboard, which Sally's team are using at the moment. So they'll log in, see a dashboard of the highest risk students, which one's going to drop out and the reasons behind that. So that product was called Purlos Convert. And we've just launched a couple of months ago a brand new product called Purlos Destinations. And that's what this webinar is about. And we're going to go through it in a bit more detail in a minute. So simple agenda would be just to talk about destinations first. Why has it become more important? What's the problem behind it? Then to look at what you used to do, Sally, at RNN Group. And then look at Purlos's approach and what our new innovative approach is now. And then just to answer a couple of questions at the end, just to kind of go and delve into a bit more detail. So yeah, so in terms of destinations, I think I'm going to go off and just show you our deck that we showed to clients, because this will, or should do, give you a bit of an overview in terms of the problem. So it's difficult to confirm positive destinations for non-progression students. Intended destinations are simple and easier to control. And the process at the moment for most colleges is, let's say for this year, students that were still there in May, you'd sit down with the students and get their intended destinations. And that's pretty much what you did, Sally, is that right?
We did test it. We used to do phone calls once they'd left, but we would do that step as well. So we would record an intended destination, and then we would use a call centre approach to find out actual destinations.
Yeah, and how useful is intended destinations? I mean, you're sitting there with students and they think they know where they're going to go. Some of them might have secure jobs or further education to go to, but how often is that the same thing? Is the answer the same 2, 3, 6 months later?
I think that one's difficult to answer because it varies in every case and depends what's going on in that student's life at that moment in time. So what they think is going to happen, and as we all know, what they think will happen in 6 months' time is often very different. And, you know, for us, the last 2 years in particular, haven't been the 2 years that we would have expected. So those conversations are very different, I think, with each student. And we operate in an area that has high unemployment, lots of deprivation. So it's really about the opportunities and what that student can do. But that conversation allows us the opportunity to start start that conversation about how do we facilitate them to achieve where they want to be and what is the best course of action. So it's more used as a sense check of where do they want to be, and are they on course to do that, or do we need to intervene and help them do something different, or support them to do something different, or study further, and just really keep that dialogue open.
Yeah, that's interesting, because you're talking about supporting the students so they get a positive outcome, right? And sometimes the feeling we got talking to colleges over the last year, and it kind of makes sense, is they've got their ILR submissions to the DFE, and sometimes it's the DFE are asking them for their ILR submissions and just to get them in quickly, and sometimes that maybe drives a behavior that's a bit different to supporting the student and making sure they're on the right destination, more so just getting data to upload to the ILR in regular intervals.
I would say that's probably something of the past, and is changing now, particularly with the way that Ofsted operates. Whilst Ofsted still wants the data, they very much want those meaningful outcomes and us to demonstrate how we've got them.
Yeah, what do you think why do you think Ofsted are focusing on it maybe a bit more now? Or what do you think their change of emphasis is?
I think the change of emphasis is around, dare I say it, an employable individual, rather than we can teach them how to pass an assessment. It's about colleges doing the very best for the students whilst they have them in front of them, and not just churning them out with an exam, that they actually are employable. Employers want to work with them. We've got the relationship with employers that tells us what they want these individuals to have when they leave us. So it's about us ensuring that they've got the right skills, and that's almost, and I'm not saying this is in every case, but sometimes irrespective of the course they're on, we all know things like hair and beauty, you're going to have an awful lot more hair and beauty students that there's actually jobs out there. So as long as you can teach them the transferable skills, I think that's probably where Ofsted's coming from more nowadays than it was about achievement rates and attendance. Don't get me wrong, it's still important. I'm not saying it isn't, but there is other things that they're now looking at. Yeah.
So, I mean, we've heard quite a few things about the first one or two inspections on the new approach from Ofsted, and just giving them a glitzy strategy document, or picking your best few students to speak to them maybe might not cut it in the future, and they're looking through the whole student journey. So that's understandable. But I think one of the big things is maybe not focusing just on attainment of a student, looking at outcomes, which everybody probably on this call and watching this video will know. But when your students don't come back to you and you have to find out where they've gone, their destination, the not known destinations, obviously certain destinations. So you've got the destinations from UCAS for anybody in HE, you've got all your students that do progress with you, you've got their destination. You might even have some destinations from students that have gone to corporations that you work with, and you can get all of that data. But the ones that you don't know are obviously the ones you're trying to get for the ILR submission. And they're not necessarily that engaged during the process. So we've got two products. One is Purlos Convert, which is used to get hold of applicants during admissions. The big difference between Purlos Convert and Purlos Destinations is that when a student is applying to a college, there's more motivation to engage in communication with the college. And when somebody has left you, there's slightly less. So past students aren't necessarily engaged during the process, but the part of the problem is exactly the same with our admissions approach as the problem with the destinations approach, in that usually there's a couple of ways to get destinations data. It'll be get your tutors to ring up your past students and try and get their destinations, or pay an outsourced phone call company to do it. But you might be calling them 10, 20 times and still not getting through. And the problem that we've seen is that phone is ineffective, or quite ineffective, and it's getting more and more ineffective. And also, if you gave the job to your tutors, some of them have different motivations, different amounts of time, and it's just quite difficult. I don't know if you see that at all.
You just don't get them to do it. We want much more than just finding out where they've ended up, though, as well. So asking a tutor isn't necessarily the right way to get those questions answered, and they'll all approach it in a very different way. So if you want something that you can use that's consistent, then it's a service that you have to bring in, I think, rather than relying on staff to do it for you. We have, for some things, we've built our own team and used those. individuals do the calling for us, but on this scale, this amount of students, it's something that we would always, I think, intend to buy in reality.
Yeah. You've obviously bought a Purlos Destination system for this year. What were you doing last year? What were you doing last year, and how did that work? What were the benefits? What were the negatives?
So for us, we've usually worked with J2 Research, so a company that does, we used to use them for our enrolment surveys and for the destination surveys. And this year, as you're aware, we've used you. As you said, you know, phone call, I know, phone sat here, but if somebody rings me and I don't know the number, I'm not going to answer it. If it's important, they'll leave me a message. And dare I say it, our 16, 18, 20-year-olds, they're worse than I am. They're definitely going to answer the phone. I don't think they ever want to really speak in person to most people. So actually, using J2 Research, and I don't think they'll mind that I'm using them as the example, but I think they have a call limit. They call 20 times. That's what they say they'll do. Now, I just find that that's somebody bugging me, and I'd block them because it would feel a bit incessant. And the reality is you don't get a massively high response rate. Ours wasn't bad. I think it was somewhere between 50 and 60%. But the reality is they don't answer phones. So you've got more of a chance of sending them a text than responding to a text, particularly if you give them short ways to answer the questions that you're asking. And therefore, with our things like our enrolment survey, we got a higher response rate.
Yeah.
And it's more immediate. We can see as it's going through. We're not waiting for call reports at the end of the week, because we have the dashboard. We can log in and see where you're at any one time with that, how many you've contacted, what the response rate is. We can even, you know, tweak stuff if we need to with you guys that we probably can't so immediately with the way that we've done it in the past.
And what's the kind of timescales been in the past? So, you know, all students are left by August this year. Then when did you start last year with the outsourced phone call company?
We usually start
going after destinations.
Yeah, we usually start around about half term, maybe a little bit before half term, and it runs for about, it won't be quite 6 weeks, but it's 4 weeks. But if we aren't getting the intended outcomes, then we'll run it a bit longer. And that it delays everything. I think doing it by phone just delays everything in that sense.
Yeah, and I guess part of the problem with humans, whether it's your tutors or an outsourced phone call company, is they're humans, right? So if you do it for 4 to 6 weeks, you know, you can go at it as hard as you can on the phone, but after the end of the 6 weeks, if you're paying an outsourced company, you're going to have to keep paying them if you keep going.
Yeah.
So what happens after that 6 weeks?
That's it. We'd shut it down, and that would be the outcome, and we'd use that data that we've collected.
Yeah. And what do you think that there might be in terms of differences with destinations from the end of that 6 week period, when you've used the outsourced phone call company to bring up and find as many destinations as possible, but from that period until the end of the next academic year, so from, I don't know, halfway through October, end of October, all the way through to, you know, August, what could kind of change, and what would you like to understand during that period that you haven't been able to do?
Destinations change, so actually they might leave college and go and get an interim job until they find the job that they want. So you always say within the first 6 months they might not get the job that they actually wanted. So a lot can change. So we would just do it that one point in time. With this, we can always go back and ask again later, because partly for us, because we have Purlos anyway, we can always utilise it to do what we need it to do with any of the groups that we have. But with J2 Research, once it's done, it's done. We wouldn't revisit it. Yeah.
And what's the process for the ILR submission? Like, who is the person who manages destination data from your side, and then, you know, when are they uploading all the data to the ILR, and how does that whole kind of process work?
The lead for destinations is our director of curriculum. And she's the one who works with the questions, and then she'll work with the MIS to provide the data in the first instance to the research company, and then it will be provided back to them to upload wherever we need it.
Yeah, okay. How easy is that whole process of uploading to the ILR? I mean,
that's relatively simple. We have some really good data geeks. If I don't call them that. Dave won't mind calling them that. He'll admit it. We have a really great data team, and they pretty much their answer is yes, and they work it out, and they don't tell us how, but they make it look fairly simple. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't ask me about the wizardry of MIS systems. That really isn't my area of expertise.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. Some of the busiest people are in MIS we found over the last year.
Completely. Yeah, completely.
So I'll just give you a little bit of an idea of kind of our approach. Our approach will evolve, and we want to try and get to a nationally structured, similar way to get destinations for everybody. There does seem to be some slight differences per region. Certain people are more bothered about focusing on needs and who's going to become employed, and other people are more bothered about seeing in work progression, and there's sometimes different focuses, but generally there isn't one standardized approach, so we're trying to move a bit towards that. This is pretty simply our onboarding approach to the destination system, is that we look at the script, which is what questions that you ask the students to get the destinations, but also to get the outcomes. How did you kind of come up with your question set, out of interest?
Our question set is, I guess it just evolves every year based on what we want to know. So we have a fairly standard set of questions. I know this year we've looked at some of the COVID response things to see if that's made a difference to the destination, so that we can report on that. But it's something that Claire and I sit down and look at, because for me, I can use destinations for marketing. Especially if I can tie it back to a school, and I can go to that school and say, X amount of your students came to our school, and this is where they've ended up, and it's their intent, and we can link it back to intended destination as well. So from my point of view, the questions really help us use it in a marketing sense. But for Claire, she has some specific questions that she has to answer for our exec, and that's where she'll drive some of the data, the question choices that she puts in. But it's usually every year you just sit down and review what we asked last year, and is it still relevant, and do we need to update it anywhere?
Yeah, because certain things from Ofsted and so forth might change, and there's 4 or 5 mandatory fields you have to put in the ILR. Yeah. For instance, when did your destination actually start?
Yeah.
So what we do at the moment is that we have a couple of approaches. So the whole premise behind our approach is WhatsApp and phone, and it'll evolve, but other companies or your own tutors will be phone only. So Purlos will go out by WhatsApp, which is one of the best communication tools in the country. It doesn't get absolutely everybody. So anybody that we don't get on WhatsApp, we'll put back on our dashboard for the colleges to access straight away in real time. That's probably another benefit of our system, in that you can go on the system and see the destination data filling up from day one, rather than get a report at the end of 6 weeks from a phone call company. So that's a potential benefit. But even though we're moving to a set structure of questions, what we do at the moment is we kind of have a consultation with the colleges and say, right, this is our question set from Purlos. We know from designing this and our data that we get the best response rates based off this structure. But what do you think? Are there any other areas that you want to add questions of your own? So we do that, and we also give a set structured CSV or Excel file with data that you'll need to populate that Excel file with, and then upload it to our system. And then what we'll do during the onboarding step will be create your tailored dashboard, which is a live dashboard. We'll also have a launch call, and we'll have that with the college to help them understand how our product works and our approach of WhatsApp and phone. And then from day one, we'll start messaging, and we'll send those first messages. And WhatsApp's very good at getting destinations quite quickly. Short messages, very easy to come back to. You won't be missing people on the phone. And after we started messaging, we would check in after a month and give you a bit of a report, a bit of an overview. But then what we do after that kind of first month, you said JT Research and other phone call companies take about 4 to 6 weeks to try and get all your destinations. Because we've got a designed WhatsApp chatbot, which is always backed by a human in case we get free form questions from the students, we'll automate follow-ups, and then we'll be able to find out whether destinations have changed. One big thing that came out of our research was sustained destinations. Has that destination been sustained, which is what you find out after 6 months from finding out the first destination. And our WhatsApp chatbot is automatically designed to do that straight away without having to get a human to do it. So that's the general onboarding timeline. I might actually show you a little bit of the system. I know you actually purchased the system, Sally, but I don't know whether you actually saw it initially.
I don't use it.
Great. It's delegated. It's delegated.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've actually done a lot of testing, even in the last few months. You can actually see somebody's live in this at the moment, even though she knew we had a webinar on. So Kim's one of our partnership managers. So this is, and this has gone through hundreds of iterations. This is the approach and the hard-coded question set that we have on WhatsApp. So just to give you a little bit of an idea, it's kind of broken down into three parts. So here on the left is finding out what the student's destination is. In the middle here, that's about starting to look at whether what they learn at the college, their course, is linked to their destination. So it's a link to, is there a positive outcome? This area here is quite a new area, which we're adding potential additional questions for colleges if they've got a specific requirement. And the third one is going into very detailed, a very detailed level about linking the learning in the course to the outcome. And what naturally happens, and this will be the same for phone call companies, tutors ringing from a college, is that you get a bit more drop off every extra question you ask. So we get a few % drop off every level we go to. And so the most important thing for most colleges based on our questions has been, can you give me the most destinations possible, the highest number of destinations possible from the data and the students I give you? So that's the first thing. And then the second one is, can you link the course or the learning to a positive outcome, which is the second bit. But I'll give you a bit of an idea. So you can see this is template H, and we've actually just changing one word or one question mark sometimes will increase the response by 2, 3, 4%. But this is the initial question. So, hi student, it's Jenny from the Students Leavers team at Bath College. Bath College is a client at the moment. Need to update your file with the Department of Education to show you how our course helped you in what you do now. So are you employed in education, in an apprenticeship, traineeship, internship, not working and not in education, or doing something else? And after this, they can have a number of different options to feedback, but there's just one number. Somebody could be employed and in education, but this pushes them into an initial answer, and then we push them down the chat flow. And then what we do is we split it up into employment, apprenticeship, traineeship, education, NEET, something else, and the whole flow. This is the chat flow that gives the best response rate at the moment. But I'll give you a bit of an idea. So we're talking about employment, which quite a lot of colleges are bothered about. They're doing 16 hours or more or less. Are they full-time, self-employed, part-time, self-employed, part-time? And what date did you start doing that? We actually changed 2 words in this message and we got a 20% increased response rate. But you can see everything's really short and sharp. So that's actually a mandatory ILR field, that one as well. But then this is quite an important question. So we can add certain bits to this question. But when people are looking at in-work progression, you want to know whether the skills that they've learned on their course has affected their destination, whether it's affected increase in responsibilities, increase in salary. So that's what the conversation flow looks like at the moment, but it is tailorable. I'll probably actually show you the live questions. So the way that we split it up is in 2 things, just what I said before. What is the destination over here, which is these questions, and then what's the outcome, and is it linked to the course or the learning that they did at the college? And then we split it up by employed, education, apprenticeship, traineeship, NEET, or other. And all of this information gets sucked up into our dashboard, which was up but isn't up anymore. Yeah. So this would be live from day one. Yeah, annoyingly, all the data's just been sucked up. Might bring that up again in a minute. But yeah, it'd be worth asking you a few questions, Sally. So I mean, in terms of positive outcome, what after leaving college, what do you actually think a positive outcome is?
It's employment that isn't you wouldn't deem as a backward step in reality. So it's something either in their chosen field, not necessarily in their chosen field, but that is they're not packing in next, which is where a lot of our students seem to want to go or drop out to go to because get paid. So it's that right step into employment. It's at the right level following the course that they've done. Another positive outcome will be that they're going on to a high level course. So if they studied a level 2, they're going on to a level 3. They've studied a level 3, they're going on to university or some higher education course. So a positive outcome is where they've taken a positive step forward, and it's not a step that either means that they've stayed the same or they've taken a step back.
Yeah, makes sense. And in terms of, I guess one thing that we've seen is we started off working with Bath on destinations. We had quite a lot of people come back and ask other questions. So students were telling Bath where their destination was, but they were also asking about further courses, which was a revenue opportunity. But it seems like our destination system or the destinations conversation could be an early version of like an alumni system. Do you think that there would be any value in an alumni system or better conversations with past alumni from colleges?
Yeah, alumni, I think everybody who works in FE will probably say it's one of the toughest things, particularly if you work in FE and marketing, because that's where it ends up usually. It's one of the hardest things to do is alumni. Students who come into FE historically don't have the affinity with their college like they would with a university or they do with their school. So to build an alumni network is generally much harder. But you're right, there is that opportunity to on-sell and gather data. But for us, what we've always used our alumni for, if we can, and we get them to engage, is we bring them back in to speak to our students, particularly if they've gone on to a really good destination or they're doing something quite exciting. You bring them back in, it just links everything together. It triangulates why they're at college. And that can be any number of things. It can be any number of departments. But in reality, you can bring back people who've been left 2 or 3 years but have done, doing really quite well. It's that success story, and that's what we're about. It's about showcasing our success stories and where we did really well. So the alumni network would do that. And as I said, it's not easy to establish an alumni network. I have tried at every college I've worked at and done various different things, and we've paid companies to do it for us. But if there's as always, if we get information back that people are willing to come back and talk to us or talk to our students, some of our alumni want to employ our students. That's how much they see the value of their education. So if we can keep those links and we find a way to manage those links, then that's always the better for us.
Yeah.
There's a product in there for you somewhere, I'm sure.
Yeah. I think yeah, well, there's always a product somewhere. I mean, I think a heavy alumni product, I don't think it might work quite as well as some of the alumni products in HE, but it seems like there's certain things we're seeing, like students coming back and asking to do extra courses as a revenue conversation. Or I spoke to Fazal, the principal at Blackburn College, and he was talking about how many people from his college had turned into thriving entrepreneurs, and it took him 20 years to happen across them in a local event. And maybe that conversation kind of could have been had,
I think we're better at it. I think we are much better at it as a sector than we used to be, but we've still got a long way to go with alumni, I think, or we certainly have as a group.
Yeah. So it finally works because my product team were messing around with it, but you can see how the destinations data gets sucked up into the system. So this is from day one, and we tailor it for the college we work with. So you can see all the new destination codes. You can click into every report. You can see if you wanted to, and not all colleges done this, you could upload your known destinations. You could click into that and see every single student. So that'd be students from the UCAS data you've got, any internally progressed students that you know where they are. But the unknown ones are the ones we want to look at. We even use AI and also humans to check the withdrawal reasons, which is potentially quite useful for changing strategy in the future and highlighting some important areas. So this is really useful for some of our clients because they can drag all the data off by CSV and Excel as well and analyze all of that information in a number of different ways. So that's quite useful. I'm glad that came up. So yeah, so that's it. Nice, short, sharp, snappy, half an hour. Great. I think there's a few people on here. Paul and Matt, I don't know if you wanted to ask any questions or if anybody else wanted to ask any questions. Feel free to email me afterwards if you want. But yeah, thanks for coming. And we're just